Hey guys, welcome back. I hope you are having an amazing day. Let's get right into the stories. The first one is an entitled People Story. Moving into my new house was supposed to be a fresh start for me. After years of renting tiny apartments in the crowded city, I had finally saved up enough money to buy a little fixer-upper house out in the peaceful suburbs. Sure, the place needed some work, but I was excited to finally have a home of my own with a backyard and no shared walls. This was my slice of the American dream, or so I thought until I met my neighbor from hell, Karen. From the very first week I moved in, Karen was a thorn in my side. She seemed to watch my house with an eagle eye, quick to scrutinize even the smallest changes I made. At first it was just passive-aggressive comments about my landscaping choices, or the color I painted my door. I didn't think much of it until the day a police cruiser pulled up outside my house. Confused, I greeted the officer who informed me there had been a complaint filed about construction being done on my house without proper permits. I assured the officer all I had done was build a small raised garden bed, hardly a major construction project. He apologized for bothering me and went on his way. A few days later, I ran into Karen outside and she offhandedly mentioned how disappointed she was the police didn't give me a citation. That's when it dawned on me. She had called them with the bogus complaint. When I confronted her, she claimed it was just a concerned neighbor looking out for the community. Over the next few weeks, the police visits increased in frequency over the most minor and ridiculous infractions. Karen called them when my grass grew half an inch too tall. She reported my parked car as an abandoned vehicle. Even something as simple as having friends over for a backyard BBQ elicited a noise complaint call. Each time the police showed up, they were apologetic for having their time wasted. A few officers even confided to me they knew exactly who was behind these frivolous calls. Apparently, Karen was notorious in the community for harassing anyone she deemed wasn't living up to her standards. As head of the Homeowners Association Board, she took her self-appointed authority to extremes. While it annoyed me to have to deal with the constant badgering from both Karen and the police arriving on her bogus claims, I still tried to keep the peace. I started ensuring I followed every homeowners association rule to the letter, not wanting to stoke the flames. But Karen's persecution fixation had moved far past homeowners association bylaws. The charade went on for months until the day I arrived home to find two police cruisers and an unmarked car parked in front of my house. I cautiously got out of my car and was greeted by two detectives who said they had a warrant to search my home on suspicions of drug activity based on evidence of frequent visitors and packages being delivered. I was floored. Not only had I never done drugs in my life, I barely even drank alcohol. As they searched every nook and cranny of my home, I knew exactly who was behind these outrageous accusations. Karen. The police didn't find anything incriminating at my home, of course, because there was nothing to find. They once again apologized and said they were required to follow up when a concerned resident filed a detailed tip with a list of suspicious activity. That night, Karen conveniently was watering her lawn when I got home. She had a smug smile on her face as she asked how my afternoon went. That was the last straw. I no longer cared about taking the high road with this unhinged bully who was trying to destroy my life. The next morning, I went straight to the police station and filed an official report for harassment, stalking, and making false claims. I provided the meticulous documentation I had been keeping of every unfair allegation Karen had made against me. The sergeant I spoke with was alarmed and assured me they would investigate and speak with Karen. Apparently that conversation did not go well because just 2 days later I heard Karen screaming racist epithets and banging on my front door. Before I could even answer, she picked up a rock from my garden and hurled it through my front window. The sound of shattering glass was soon accompanied by blaring police sirens. Karen's public meltdown had been the final nail in her coffin. The officers arrested her on the spot for the property damage and verbal assaults, and thanks to my diligent record-keeping, she was also later charged for the months of false police reports. In the end, justice was served. Karen was sentenced to 6 months in jail for her crimes against me. She is now a convicted felon and can no longer serve on the Homeowners Association Board. My neighborhood has been peaceful and quiet ever since her absence. I may have lost a few months of my life dealing with her harassment, but sometimes you have to fight back against bullies rather than let them walk all over you. Going to the police about her antics was the best decision I could have made, even if it took longer than I would have liked to resolve the situation. In the end, her own violence and lies landed her in prison, and I finally got to enjoy my new home without that racist homeowners association, Karen constantly causing trouble. The next one is a pro-revenge story. So this happened earlier today and was too perfect not to share with you guys. I work in construction as the foreman for a new house build. The location is kinda strange. The house is 250 feet up a hill via a footpath only. All of our materials have to come up this footpath by hand. It's a pain in the ass to manually carry, quite literally, an entire house up this hill. One of our saving graces is having the 2 parking spots on the street at the bottom of this hill, marked with official no parking signs. Unfortunately, there is an elementary school about half a block away, and the parents of children seem to regularly, at least twice a day, think it's okay to park in our spots. Now I consider myself a reasonable person, so if someone is parked in the spots and we don't have a delivery or a need to park a truck, I will let it go. If we need the spots and there's someone parked there, however, I will ask them to move nicely, and most of the time they do so immediately. Until today, I get a phone call from the lumber delivery truck that is en route to our location. He says he'll be there in about 2 or 3 minutes. I let him know I will meet him at the street and make sure he has space to park. He's carrying all of the material to frame the roof of our house, which is a lot of really big lumber, and will take easily an hour to bring up the hill. Naturally, I didn't want him parked in the middle of the street with his hazards on for an hour when we have a perfectly good parking spot for him. As I begin my trip down the hill, I notice there is a school parent sitting in her car idling, assuming she's just waiting to pick up her child. I walk up to her car and politely let her know that she is parked in a no parking zone, and we really need her to clear it to park a delivery truck. She scoffs at me and rudely states back, "I'll just be a few minutes and your truck isn't here. Take a chill pill, dude." Before I can respond, a giant lumber truck comes around the corner and I wave to him and then gesture towards him to the woman in the car, who has now put her window back up to ignore me. I put on my best customer service smile and wave at her through the window. She puts it down halfway and angrily shouts, "What?" By now, the truck has pulled up alongside her car, and I politely ask her again, with a stronger tone of voice, to move her vehicle, reminding her that she is illegally parked in a tow-away zone. Then she gives me this wonderful idea. She says, "Can't you guys just unload around me? Jesus, it's not that hard." I give her another smile and walk away, a brilliant plan forming in my head. I instruct the delivery driver to park as closely to her as possible and block her in with the porta-potty that is at one end of our reserved spots and the parked car that is parked just adjacent to our spots on the other end. He smiles because he immediately gets what I'm trying to do and proceeds to expertly block this lady and her car into a little 2 parking spot jail. We unstrap the lumber, and my guys begin hauling material up the hill. Meanwhile, I call the police parking enforcement to let them know the situation. At this point in time, I wasn't trying to get her in trouble. I just wanted a record of why we were blocking part of the street so we don't get in trouble with the city. The very friendly traffic officer lets me know that she can be there in about 30 minutes and deal with the situation for me. Wonderful. As we continue to unload lumber, the child of the parent shows up, and wouldn't you know it, Mom is just now realizing that the lumber truck is parked so close she can't get out of her driver's door to meet her kid. She awkwardly clambers across the inside of her car and stumbles out the passenger door, shooting glaring looks at me and the truck driver in the process. She loads her kid into the back and then begins to realize that she has no way of leaving. She comes storming up to myself and the driver and states, "I'm in a big hurry. You need to move your damn truck right now so I can go." Before I can respond, the driver gets a grin on his face and says, "Ma'am, in order to unload the lumber on the truck, we had to unstrap it, and per our company policy, I'm not allowed to move the truck with any unsecured load on it. Sorry." This sends her into near aneurysm levels of blood pressure. Meanwhile, I can barely contain my laughter. "Forget your policy, I have somewhere to be," she barks back at him. At this point, with impeccably convenient timing, the parking enforcement officer shows up and parks behind the truck. She doesn't see the officer arrive, and while the officer is still getting out of her vehicle, I just casually say, "Can't you just pull out around it? It's not that hard." With the biggest crap-eating grin I've ever had, I watch as she realizes that I just used her line on her. "Forget you!" she yells and storms back to her car and angrily clambers back in through that passenger door and into the driver's seat. At this point, the officer is walking up to myself and the driver. Before she can even introduce herself, the mom in the car slams it into reverse and stomps on the gas. crashing into our porta potty and knocking it over, and then throws the car into drive and tries to mount the curb and drive on the sidewalk. The officer, driver, and I are staring in disbelief as she gets halfway over the curb and gets stuck. I can hear her screaming obscenities over the idling truck from inside her car. The officer promptly walks up to the door of the car and orders her out. My favorite part of the entire thing is watching her face go into shock as she realizes she just did all of that in front of a police officer. She gets slapped in cuffs as the parking officer calls for a second unit, and she is promptly sat on the very curb she tried to drive over. She sits on the curb yelling to the now two officers about how we told her she could stay there and that we never asked her to move. The traffic officer responds that she was the one who was originally called when she first refused to move, and that she already knows what's going on. While myself and the driver are giving a report to the second officer, my guys finish moving the remainder of the lumber, and the driver finishes his statement and takes off to go back to the yard. By the end of the ordeal, she was arrested, charged with child endangerment. Her kid was in the back of the car the whole time, reckless driving, destruction of property, the porta potty, and driving on a suspended license. On top of all that, she also got her car towed. The kid went home with his grandma, and she went to spend some quality time in a cell. I never expected her to actually heed my advice to just pull out around it, but I think next time she'll probably think twice about parking in a tow-away zone if she ever gets a license again. The next one is a petty revenge story. So I was hired to make an advertisement for this cosmetic startup. I normally don't accept local clients because I have had a lot of crappy experiences with them, but this client sounds like she's willing to pay for my services, so I accepted her. I didn't charge that much, only $60 per week. On average, I charge foreign clients $300 per week. The first 2 weeks were good. She provided me with all the materials I needed to make an effective advertisement, despite her limited budget. However, we started having arguments in the third week. She suddenly demanded that our ads should have at least 1,000 clicks per day, which is absurd because her budget only allows for around 1,200 reaches per day. I told her that for it to be possible, she should increase her budget. Suddenly, she called me a fraud, despite my ads receiving at least 300 clicks per day. And now she refuses to pay me. For the past 2 weeks, she has been ignoring my calls. This weekend, I think she has blocked my number. Stupidly, she didn't remove me from her page, so I decided to be petty. Her ads are still running, so I changed them. I replaced the pictures with a text post that says, "Don't buy from this." The owner refused to pay me my salary. An irate VA she called a fraud for not meeting her absurd expectations. I also included screenshots of our conversation to back it up. I did it last night, and I'm sure she will contact me any moment now. But I'm done with her. That $120 she owes me is hers to keep. As for me, I'm not accepting local clients anymore. I'm just done with them. Update. So yesterday, around 4 p.m., I checked the ads, and apparently, they reverted back to the original ones. Then a few moments later, my account now says, "Account error," which means the payment method has been canceled. I felt frustrated because I'm still not done being petty, so I posted my story, anonymously, on a group called Social Media Marketing Philippines, as a way to vent out and subtly warn potential VAs that she might hire. Naturally, people in that group are on my side. This morning, I finally got a response from her. She's angry. Apparently, she saw my post and threatened to sue me for defamation. Note: I didn't specify which startup it was. I only mentioned it's a cosmetic company, so she has nothing to base her case on. However, I have receipts showing that she hasn't paid me, and I told her that even though we have no written contract, our chat, which I kept, can be used against her. On top of that, I mentioned that my uncle is a regional judge, not a lie, and I come from a family of politicians, again not a lie. Simply put, I have a lot of power to use against her. At first, she didn't believe it, so I googled my grandfather's name, which led to a Wikipedia page. She went silent after that. After probably an hour, I sent her a message telling her it doesn't have to end this way. All she needed to do was pay the wages she owed me because otherwise I could use my family's influence to make sure her business goes bankrupt. She immediately sent me my salary. I thanked her and then blocked her. The next one is a malicious compliance story. I used to work for a big IT consulting company notorious for not paying overtime. I worked for a client's migration project for almost 1.5 years, leading the functional migration team. The three of us worked for the client for 3 years before the start of the migration project, so we knew the data we had to migrate, all the nuances, and 2 weeks before the migration date, 99% of the data was already migrated and validated. We only dealt with day-by-day new data in the last 2 weeks. Another manager who outranked me became extremely angry about our calmness because the part she led was behind schedule due to bad scheduling, and everyone was being overworked because of her mishaps. Come migration date, Saturday starting at 9 a.m., everyone was expecting long hours of work, but we clocked out at noon with the data validated by the client and the go-ahead signed, sealed, and delivered. My team received a written commendation from the client. The manager's team spent the entire weekend there. She received a complaint letter from the client. The manager complained about us and made me and my senior analyst spend the next month waiting for incidents/bugs/complaints. We received 5 in the whole month. My senior analyst spent 8 hours a day studying a new language, and I took the chance to update my CV, I wanted out, and help a couple of former colleagues who needed to solve bugs and problems within the manager's team responsibilities. A couple of weeks later, it was evaluation time. At the IT company, everyone was graded from A to D. A was exceeding expectations, D was you're out of here, B was good, and C was pretty much I'm starting to think you might not be good to work here. Given the commendation from the client, I was expecting an A. However, my evaluation was done by the manager and my mentor, a close friend of the manager. They gave me a C because we didn't see any pressure in your work and you certainly lack motivation. I complained and took a long overdue, already planned month-long vacation. This was in June. After that, when I returned to work, I was assigned to a project with another client, led by the manager's husband. He wanted me to prepare 122 integrations with different systems in 4 months. I told him that in the previous project led by his wife, they took 2 years to have 12 integrations ready, but I would give it a shot. I even emailed him the planning where it clearly showed the time they took. 2 of those months were July and August, months when pretty much everyone at the client goes on holiday. The manager and his wife also went on holiday for almost all of August. I spent those 2 months chasing people around the client's office, but starting in September, 6 integrations were closed, and 6 more were almost closed pending validation. The manager came back from holiday and was furious. He called me a slacker and started telling me that his wife was right, that I lacked motivation, and that I would need to work until midnight for the rest of the project to make up for lost time. And I said, no, I won't work an hour more than what you're paying me. I told you that your expectations were unrealistic, and you went ahead with them anyway. He went ballistic. I replied, I just lack motivation to work on your project. I want out of the project. I was out of the project in no time. I got a call from my mentor. She said they were considering firing me without pay because of this. I told them about the unrealistic planning. She said that I was being unrealistic and that the planning was good. I produced the email I sent the manager. My mentor went quiet. A minute later, she told me, what do you want? If you can't guarantee that I won't have to work overtime ever again, I want out. I want full severance and then some, and I want the company to make it look like I quit, not like you fired me. She went quiet again. She said she'll see what she could do. By the end of the day, I was out of there, smiling. The next one is an entitled people story. This is not my story. This is my friend's story that I'm posting for him because he doesn't have a Reddit account and wants people to hear about this. Also, for convenience, I'm going to write this in the first-person POV because pronouns are hard to keep up with. Everything here is approved by my friend. So I, 21M, have an ex, Angelica, 20F. Angelica and I had an on and off relationship since we were about 15, but got serious when COVID hit, and I had to move back to my hometown. We got an apartment together, and very soon after, she started spending a lot of time with her cousin. Long story short, she's having a relationship with her cousin. We broke up. We've been broken up for 9 months at this point. For 7 of those months, her phone has been on my phone bill, and she owes me over $500. Fine. Whatever. I'll never see that $500, and she always makes excuses to pay me back. That's life. It's my own fault for letting her keep using me as a cash cow. She also took my car when we broke up, and I let her because I was too afraid she would try to take my apartment too. Anyway, it's 9 months past our breakup. I get a message. Hey, I'm pregnant. I'm on my way home from work, so I don't respond. That is 9 months past being my problem. It's not my baby. She messages me again. My boyfriend, the one she cheated on me with, and I have nowhere to stay. Still 9 months past my problem. Angelica has never worked a day in her life. She lives off the disability check from her boyfriend and spends 99% of it on weed and fast food. She never paid rent, and it's documented that she never paid rent. Anyway, she tells me, "My name is still on the lease. We're going to move in September." I tell her, "Your name is not on the lease. It was renewed last month and I took your name off. I'm sorry." She messages me, calling me an a-hole and saying she's moving in because she has nowhere for her baby and 3 dogs to stay. Mind you, my apartment is more like a studio and barely fits me, let alone 2 other people and 3 dogs. I tell her it's not happening. I'm moving out of town soon anyway. Also, come pick up her stuff that she's left at my apartment for 9 months. She says no, and if I throw it away, she's going to press charges. I tell her it doesn't matter because when I move, I'm throwing it away. She later called my landlord and told him I was planning to move out. I got upset at this and told her I ran the numbers on the car. It's still in my name. Get the car out of my name now, or I'm repossessing it, Oregon. She can leave me alone. She started bawling on a call, asking how I could do this to her and her unborn child. She said I was condemning her and her child to be homeless. She also still has a gun in my name that I told her to give back, or I'm calling the cops. I'm really considering repossessing the car since it was mine from the start and is still in my name. She doesn't deserve to get a free car handed to her. She needs to wake up. She keeps saying she needs a place to stay. I'm ruining her and her baby's life. It's literally my apartment that she has never once paid rent for. I don't know how she thinks she's entitled to just live in my apartment with the guy she cheated on me with and 3 dogs. I hope the baby ends up okay. It's not its fault its mother is a spoiled brat, but I also hope being homeless and carless wakes her up. Tiny update. My friend said his ex is coming to pick up her stuff tomorrow and return the gun. If he gets shot, I'll let you guys know, I guess. Update. She and her boyfriend, fake cousin, came to my friend's apartment, returned the gun, and picked up her stuff. Her boyfriend then proceeded to wave his own gun around and demand to be put back on the lease. That's not how it works. My friend called the cops. They ran away before the cops arrived. I'm not sure about the rest. Thank you for watching. I would really appreciate it if you could like the video and subscribe to our channel if you haven't already. We'll see you again tomorrow.